across the country, the weather's been temperamental, things happening in all kinds of spaces and places. They had hail in Atlanta the other night, Sunday night. It was big as golf balls,
Yeah.
one of my
Wow.
girlfriends said. So, if certain people would stop fooling around with weather satellites and HARP and doing all kinds of things, playing around with the weather, Mother Nature, she's not taking too kindly to human intervention when it comes to, you know, nature. So,
Yeah. Things are getting crazy out there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I am uh coming into a place of what happened in Nashville yesterday. I mean, just I don't know, Mason. What are we gonna do as a race of humans? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What are we
Ye-
gonna do? It just makes me so sad.
Yeah. I know it's when I was younger in my early 20s, I used to think that I had a lot more ambition to change the world on the way everybody sees things, and I don't think that left me, but I think I started evolving more to I'm just going to try to take care of my little corner of the world and just do my best and evolve and grow as a human and, hopefully die peacefully and with no regrets. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
said that the other day to someone. I want to die empty,
Yeah.
right? Because when I come back, I'm going to have a full vessel of, I'm going to have other things I'll have to do. So I want to make sure that this lifetime, my tank gets emptied.
Yeah.
And I too echo the same sentiment. Um, I'm such an empathetic,
Mm,
you know, so so tragedy hits me really hard
yeah.
in any aspect. And so over the years, I've really learned how to kind of channel it so that it doesn't hurt me to the point where I just become immobilized.
Hmm.
Um, and I stay focused on my work. Um, I think I think we all have a journey that we've come to the planet to do. And once we realize, what that pathway looks like, how it affects and infects other humans, we have to really work at aspiring to be in alignment with our greatest and highest self. And I think that energy alone will resonate. I still say there's more love in the world. I still say that, even, with all the crazy stuff that goes on, I still stand on the side of humans are still good at their core, that, you know what I mean, that I still err on the side of the best. I want to stay in that space. I just want to stay in that space. So I focus on my work. My work really helps to channel that energy. So I hear you
A-
on that.
Amen. Well, I'm very glad I hit record because technically we didn't start yet, but
Oh,
we're gonna get rolling if you want to get rolling. You were dropping knowledge right there, and I loved it. So, thank you so much for joining me on the Herbalist Hour. I was gonna call you Angelique Sobande Greer, but it looks like you're going by Aya now. Is that true?
what's Iya?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm that's just a title. I've been a priestess for
Yeah.
years. So that's just a title. You can
So,
you can call me what you want. Just
okay.
just make sure it's positive.
All right. Fair enough. So, Ia is a title then.
Yes, Iya is
Okay.
a title. It's a title for a priestess.
I love it. Well, very cool. Yeah, I'll be calling you Sabande.
Yes, that would be great.
All right. Very good. Well, as I said, thank you for joining the show, Sabande. And yeah, like I said, I'm glad I pushed record because yeah, we immediately just started getting right into it and hearing the inspirational and positive words. So, of course, I've known you via email and the internet for years now. But as we were talking about just before I hit record, we've been playing tag, trying to like talk to each other for a bit here now, and I'm glad that we finally get to have a conversation and get to know you a little bit better. So I'm kind of curious, how did you get involved in the world of herbalism?
Well, I should say herbalism got involved in me. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. Let's start there.
Okay.
Originally from Louisville, Kentucky. Um, And my great grandmother was my primary educator into the initiation of the plant world. Um, when I didn't even know it, I spent a lot of time with my great grandparents. Um, uh, my great grandmother, of course, didn't call herself a healer or a herbalist, or she didn't call herself any of those things. She just knew what she knew, what she knew.
Yeah.
And without a formal, education, I don't believe that Granny even graduated. I never heard her say that she graduated. I believe she may have gotten to sixth or seventh grade, maybe,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
But my granny was really knowledgeable about the world, and she had a green thumb. And I spent like my spring breaks and my summers, and it was the vacation Bible schools, and it was the getting on the Greyhound buses and going, from one church to another. And it was the little things, that I was, doing with my granny. And when I look back, Mason, most of it came through the art of storytelling. Now, she was making things. But as a child, I just thought Granny was just a little eccentric. Granny was just a little weird, you know.
Yeah.
But she always talked about plants. Her medicine was in her storytelling. And, you know, for the African American community, our healing traditions are based in our oral stories. It's only recent that we're finding more and more things written, that are coming to the forefront, of African Americans and and our history here in the West when it comes to plant medicine. But
Mm.
but if you do some deep diving, you'll know that our history has been here since the first slave arrived, here in North America. So a lot of her plant medicine stories, came to me orally. And she learned them from her great grandmother, who was an herbalist as well, and a slave on a
Mm.
plantation somewhere in Lexington, Kentucky. And her name was Ida May Cox. And the story goes that she married another slave forcibly. She was forcibly married to another slave by the name of Peter Cox, who was Cherokee and also an herbalist medicine person. And when they put the two of them together, they had a great powerhouse team. And this team was the team that was doing all of the medicine work, for the sick slaves, for the plantation owners' children. And they were taking them, but between the Kentucky, Ohio area, to other plantations, and utilizing their services to help help heal people. And so yeah, she learned the art of that from her great grandmother. And then here I came 5 generations later, into the family. And as a child, like I said, I just thought she was weird. I just thought she was just really weird. When the seasons would change, Mason, she'd always have, my gosh, cod liver oil. She had me swallow copper pennies. That's when pennies were really made of copper.
Oh, wow.
And it was what I realized years later. That was a vitamin source. She was giving me a vitamin source,
Yeah.
real copper.
Wow.
And then the cod liver oil would help you to get the penny out on the other end, where a granny would keep this bucket beside the toilet.
Yeah.
And she would tell you, don't flush the toilet, don't, or commode, she called it a commode. don't
Okay.
don't flush the commode, because she wanted to go in and find the penny. But what she was really doing, she was kind of seeing if you had parasites, if just she was a trove of knowledge,
Yeah.
a trove of knowledge, and deep-seated wealth. And I got away from that, of course. Of course
Mhm.
you do. You get away from that as a kid. And it wasn't until years later I left and went to Europe, and I was living in Amsterdam. This was in the late 80s.
Mhm.
And I had a landlord who was an elderly lady. She was Dutch. She spoke very little English. And in order to get to my apartment, I had to go through her hallway. So one spring, I'm 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 trucking, I'm coming home, I'm trucking through the hallway, and she comes out and she takes my hand and she rubs my hand and she looks into my face. And what she was doing was iridology. But this is the 80s. This is the late 80s. I had no clue what iridology was. I had no clue about holistic health sciences. I was, I I was blind to all of that.
Mhm.
And what she said to me in Dutch was, "You don't look so well." And she was right.
Yeah.
I didn't feel well. I felt like what I was battling was the flu in the springtime, and you know how that feels in your bones. My joints were really achy. And what the mistake that I made, Mason, was that several weeks before I called back home. This is before cell phones. So I actually made a landline call to my parents and talked to my mom, which you should never do when you're on this other side of the world and you're 17. um I told my mama I don't feel well. I think I may have the cold. My mom's first reaction was, go find an American doctor, right?
Yeah.
And, I'm 17, 18. I'm just like, yeah, mom, I didn't do any of that, right? I didn't follow her instruction. And so the landlord took me out back. She grabbed a basket. She took me out back, and it was, again, it was springtime, and she began to pluck these flowers. And it was at that moment, Mason, that I realized that I was having a light bulb blessing moment.
Mhm.
Here I was on the other side of the world with this old Dutch woman who didn't speak very much English, and she was plucking the same plants and flowers that my granny connected me to when I was little. You know,
Wow.
yeah, it gives me chills every time I say it
I'm getting
because
goosebumps too.
every time I say it because I believe the universe gives us lots of opportunity, and it knocks on our our door, our head, our heart. We never pay attention.
Yeah.
We're so, humans are so busy.
Mhm.
So to have the wherewithal at that age to connect that at that moment, I told myself, I don't know when I'm going back, but when I get back, I've got to go home and really sit with my granny and really learn. She had once told me, Mason, she said, "It's not my job as an elder to teach you anything. It's your job to come and ask me for what you want."
That's pretty
Yeah,
wise.
that's pretty wise.
Yeah.
And she also said that if I die and you don't ask the questions, right, it'll be as if a great library has been burned. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, she didn't have the education,
Right.
right? So to call herself a great library was just profound to me. And so 8 years later, I returned after Desert Storm. I stayed another year. I returned in the early 90s. And I was here in Tennessee, and Louisville, and between Louisville and Nashville is like a 3-hour drive. And so I would go back and forth home. And at that time, she was probably in her early 70s, probably. And I would just begin to spend those weekends with her. Now, I also thought too, Mason, I'm going home. This is going to be clinical.
Okay.
Uh, I went home with my journal and my pen, and I was ready to take these notes. And she was just like, "I know what you're doing with that journal and that pen," was her sentiment. Because what I have to give you, child, is going to come from my heart, and it has to come into your heart, not into your head, but into your heart. Like what I've got to teach you, you can't this, you can write it down at some other point, but you're going to have to get it here.
Yeah.
Or it'll just be information, right? So I spent the next probably 7 or 8 years. No, it was a little longer than that. Yeah, a little longer than that, because she began to go into the stages, early stages of dementia.
Mm.
And uh, uh, yeah, that's my foundation. And let me go back a minute. While I was in while I was living overseas, while I was in Europe, um, of course, no cell phones were going on then, no internet. And so after this epiphany moment with my landlord, I went to the library, and because I was like, I've gotta, I've gotta, I've gotta get some books,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've gotta, like, what is this? What is this plant thing, right? I've got to get some books. The 2 books that were there that were only in English. You ready for them?
Let's hear it.
Back to Eden
Uh-huh.
and Rosemary Gladstar.
All right.
So when it comes to my Granny was my foundation, but when it comes to my formal, book literary education, those 2 books were pivotal. They were pivotal in my journey, and that just opened up. It just opened up so much more.
Wow, what a story. Sometimes I feel like I get a little jealous of people who have that lineage of like, oh, my great grandma was an herbalist and her great grandma was an herbalist or whatever, but we all have our own life's paths, and you know what I mean? So yeah, it's really cool to hear that was your upbringing. And I'm also very thankful that you ended up getting, humble enough to go sit with your great grandma and learn from her.
Yeah, when she passed away, Mason, I had 3 daughters, and she was here for the last child, which Zola came in 2001, and she passed shortly thereafter. She made me make 3 promises. One, this was early on. One, teach your children, like whatever your magic is, teach your children. 2, never let the machines do that work that your hands are supposed to do.
I like that.
Yeah. And 3, whatever you do, I don't care who it is you think you're going to become, whatever profession, passion, do it with love. Do it from a space of love. Do it from a space of compassion. And she started that with simply being in the kitchen and cooking. If you don't feel well, if your attitude is jacked up, if you had a bad day, if somebody pissed you off, don't go into the kitchen and attempt to make food, because you transmit that energy. She didn't call it energy, but
Yeah.
she, now I can translate that.
Yeah.
What she was saying is, don't get out of the funk, get back in alignment, right? Come back to center, and then go forth in love, because everything that you produce, everything that you put your hands on, everything that you spew from your mouth, if someone is receiving that, you want them to receive that in the most beneficial, healing way. And if you're not in a space of that for yourself, in alignment for yourself, then how are you going to give that to someone else? And so those are her 3 promises, and I really keep those. It keeps me steady and stable.
I love that.
Yeah.
Would your mom and grandma remember your great grandma as this like badass wise lady, or do you think they'd have kind of different memories of her?
Dad, you know what? That's a great question, because I'm the only one in the family, that knows her in this way.
Yeah. Interesting.
Not even my grandmother, right? Um, my mom, nobody knows her in this way. And I'm just like, well, was Granny shape-shifting just for me? But what I realize is that we all have, it's like being a child of sibling, and you have siblings. Each child has experienced their parents at a different phase of their parents' life. Like, we have 3 daughters, 30, 26, and 22. two.
Yeah.
Each one of those children have experienced Sobande at a different stage of my development, growth, and motherhood. So while they have some things, they've grown up in the house together, right? And that kind of is a testimony to why kids in the same house can grow up together, and one can be just Billy Badass and the other is like, where did you come from? Right? Because they've experienced their parents at a different stage of their life. And I think I just happened to be, I am the oldest grandchild on both sides of my family. So I think I just I think I just got the blessing of experiencing my great grandmother at a different stage in her life. Um, uh, to be Black, to be in the South, and to be a woman is a heavy load and a heavy cross to bear. And she did it with such grace and such style and tenacity. There was an inner strength that she had, and her knowledge it's nothing that I've ever come across ever in all the study I've had since. As a matter of fact, when I would come back to her with book knowledge, she would say, if you're going to talk to me about something you read or found out, I don't want to hear it because I told you that. Or
Right. Yeah.
it's just like, okay, Granny, no more books, no more discussing what I read in the book for you.
What was her name?
Dorothy Louise Greenwade.
All right. Shout out to Dorothy.
Yes.
Did
Yes.
she get to see you become an herbalist?
She did not.
Okay.
She knew that I had a store, which was the first thing that actually happened for me. When I got back to the States, I opened up the city's first herbal, this in early 90s.
Yeah. Wow.
The city's first herb shop was Botanica. We had a 2-seat vegan lunch counter, or a vegetarian vegan. This was, we're talking Tennessee.
Yeah, in
So
the 90s.
in Black.
Yeah.
So I was just
Talk
doing
about
all kinds.
eccentric.
Yeah, I was doing all kinds of things that were out of the box.
Yeah.
So she knew about that. She never got to see it because by that time she was in a assisted living facility, and like I said, it was just like the early stages of her dementia. Um, and Yeah, but I do know, Mason, and I have experienced, definitely through dreams and just through the work, that she's always with me, right? And I do know that I've become all of her tangible possibilities. All the things that she could not do as an African American woman.
Mm.
I've become those tangible possibilities. And so I stand on the shoulders of some mighty ancestors, and collectively, and so she's definitely gone from the body, but she's always here. She's always present, always present.
I love that. Have you used that term before, the tangible possibilities before? Because I love that.
I've probably used it somewhere
Yeah.
in my writing. And I believe it. I believe that came from her. I
Okay.
believe that
Okay.
that phrase came from her. Every generation looks forward to the next generation being better and having
Hmm.
better and overcoming some things. And um, I knew she wanted that. I knew she wanted that for me. I don't know what she thought it looked like.
Hmm.
Um, she never she never she never poured her dreams into me, but she did.
Yeah.
And I think it was subtle. I think it was, definitely on a cosmic and spiritual level. I think she did it through just the things that she talked to me about. You know what I mean? Those
Yeah.
were her tangible possibilities. And I really had to just find a place when I found my path to uncover it and call it, and manifest it in that way. So yeah, when they say we are the dreams of our ancestors, I
Mm.
definitely am. I definitely am. So it's a deep bow of gratitude to her, for all the magic Yeah,
Yeah.
she gave me a lot of magic.
I love that. And I'm sure she's extremely proud of you, and you really are carrying forth her legacy. And I kind of feel like Dorothy's a part of this show today. So
I hope so. I
yeah,
hope so.
I love that. I'm curious. So when you said you started your herb shop, Botanica, that was in Nashville, Tennessee.
Actually, right outside of Nashville, a
Is
place
that
called
Buchanan?
Clarksville.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and we're gonna talk about Sacred Waters Retreat, which is in Buchanan, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm not too familiar with the geography of Tennessee, but yeah, just trying to get things straight. But I was curious how you went from doing the herb shop to starting NCB herb school.
Yeah. Well, here we go. Ancestors again.
Okay.
So, I opened that. I actually started off in 1990 with a catalog herb business, and that flowed over to opening this herb shop in 92, and I ran that store till 99.
Mhm.
We had a tornado that came through here in 99. My store was downtown. It was the only black woman owned store, you know, in that geographical area, which had been exclusively in, white owned. It was it was just, it's like most, it's like most cities, and their historic downtown.
Mhm.
And this tornado came through one night, and the next morning we were getting calls that, the city had been hit. Clarksville is the home of Austin Peay State University. And my store was about 2 blocks from the university, and it annihilated my business. Like, you know, it looked like a person just came in and just a giant just stepped on it.
Wow.
Um, a lot of amazing things came out of that, though. Um, so here's the testimony. So I carried 383 uh bulk herbs in glass jars on glass shelves. Would
Oh,
you believe that not a single glass shelf or herb jar was cracked, broken, or damaged?
I was already picturing the devastation. Wow, that's nuts.
Everything else around it,
Yeah.
but those glass shelves and those
Wow,
glass jars survived. I was like,
that's crazy.
yeah, it gives me chills. But looking back on it, OMG. Um, I spent all my savings opening that store. I didn't have a business loan. I didn't have a credit card for that. It was all my hard-earned money that opened that store. And uh, we didn't have the internet then. Um, so uh, how can I explain it? I was insured, but I was with a local insurance company within the city. Would you believe that my policy didn't have water or wind damage coverage?
Wow. Oh no.
So for a store that I put in, an excess more than 400 grand, I got back like $26,000,
Mm.
you know. And um at the time I was already teaching. So the store was only about 600 square feet, but it had 3 major rooms. The front part was the botanica where all the herbs. Had my lunch counter. I was doing bulk stuff like turbinado sugar and things that just people were just not accustomed to having at that time in the early 90s.
Sure.
And then the middle room was like a little gift shop. And then the third room was a classroom. So I was already doing some teaching. I was teaching women's health through what do they call it? Distance learning at like Austin Peay State and some local colleges. I was, doing some small classes with women's health. And so when the tornado happened, I thought to myself, you know what? I really like teaching. I like teaching. and I know I'm not out of this herb game, right?
Mhm.
And the old adage where a window where a door closes, a window opens, or vice
Mhm.
versa.
Mhm.
I knew that was my moment. So I decided I wanted to teach full time. And I thought, well, it's been really difficult for me. Um, outside of my granny, I didn't have any other formative or formal training,
Mhm.
right? Everything I had been downloaded, plus my two books, Rosemary Gladstar and Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss, right? Which are like, I call that my herbal Bible.
Yeah, sure.
And um so I said, you know what? I'm gonna open up a school. And it was right around the time the internet was just getting started, right? It was dial up, you were AOL, you know. And I decided I was gonna, you know, continue to teach live and in person classes, and then put this entity on on this, called, this internet
Mhm.
thing. And yeah, um of course it took years. It took years for me, for the internet to really catch hold for the school. But
Mm.
I kept plugging at it as far as teaching and traveling. And, I started conducting classes in my home, in my kitchen, and my backyard, and small retreats. Began to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And yeah, the Granny's vision Granny's vision got bigger. It just got
Mhm.
bigger. And I could no longer really contain it. It grew its own wings. It really did.
You seem like someone with almost infant creative energy.
I feel like that. I feel like that when I look back at my young self. I think I've always been very creative. I've always I went to a performing arts school um, for vocal music.
Wow.
I was in a band in Europe, that toured. We opened for people like Milli Vanilli.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've got some stories, man. I got some stories. So, I'm not just an herbalist, but yeah, I think I've always, that creative
Yeah.
spark for
Yeah.
me has always been there. And just narrowing that down, and knowing that this is my path has been the most enlightening part of that. And I think we all come to the planet with our gifts. We just really have to work at listening to what we got to get quiet. We got so much chatter going on in our heads that we don't get the opportunity to just get quiet to listen to how the gifts show up, and what's the consistent pattern of what's going on in your life. Maybe that's your gift,
I
so.
couldn't agree more. When I was a kid, I also feel like I have infinite creative energy where I was always drawing and doing some sort of art, this or that. And then, I hit my early teens and throughout my teenage years, and then this like depression kind of sets in, and
Mhm.
I start feeling sad and all this other stuff. And I feel like all of the creativity just got zapped from me. But then once I started kind of discovering like the healing power of plants and nutrition and yes, meditating and getting quiet, I feel like in my late teens, early 20s, I started finally being able to listen to my heart again. And then all of a sudden just kind of whooshes back. And then now I feel like I'm very heart led, and that's why I could just continue to expand on HerbRally and the projects within it, because I just feel like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun to continuously create. And yeah, I think you're right. I think it stems from quieting and listening to your internal, like what your heart is telling you to do.
Yeah, it could be a journey. It's a real deep journey. And the process can be, um, it brings up a lot of things. It brings up grief, it brings up trauma, it brings up, that process. But I think the journey of uncovering self is that's I think that's our purpose. I think that's our real purpose. because once we can understand who we are, we can co-create community collectively,
Love that.
right? We can co-create it, and that goes beyond gender. That goes beyond race and culture. That goes beyond those things, but that it has to start here. You can't just pull at straws from the outside and expect that to fill you. You have to fill your vessel from the inside and understand it. Pour out the stuff you don't need, and then start from scratch, understand who you are, and then pour into the things, pour the things into you that you need to make you a better human. I think it's really all of our journeys. I think it's just about really getting to a level where we can grasp it and understand it. And so even I'll be 54 this year, and I'm doing it on a different level at this point. This is probably, the 50s have been such an amazing transformational time in my life and in my heart space. I've got more years behind me than I have in front of me, but like I told you early, I'm going to die on empty.
Yeah, I love that. Well, as you were discussing the evolution of the store to the school, you did mention in passing that you had been hosting these retreats, and you got that beautiful logo behind you. I wanted to talk a bit about some of your retreats, not just Sacred Waters retreat, but definitely want to kind of dive into the retreat realm.
Well, let's see. These events, these collective gatherings came out of my own personal need, my own personal journey. Being in the field of herbalism, for me, 30 years of active participation in the field of herbalism has been a lonely journey. One, because I was not always welcome in spaces and places, just being a Black woman. My knowledge was not always acceptable because I didn't have the degree. I've got a bachelor's degree. I've got undergrad degrees and university degrees, but I didn't have anything to tout in the world of herbalism. And it often got me the stares and the all of the passive aggressive energy that the West has poured into marginalized people and marginalized communities. And the world of herbalism was no different. I came with high expectations and would often leave very disappointed. Um, I'm going to say this because it came full circle to me. I can remember in the 80s. No. In the 80s. Yeah, no, I can remember in the early 90s reaching out to um the American Herbalist Guild. There were no people of color. And I don't remember what I asked when I reached out, right? Because I was like, oh, the American Herbalist Guild. I was overseas. I had just heard about it. I was like, I would love to become a part of that, right? Like I've got some, like American Herbalist Guild. My face tells it all, right? So
Yeah, it does. I'm very disappointed.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then, years later, like, I don't know how long ago that was, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, they send me this email and they're just like, we want you to come and teach. And I was like, what?
How did that land? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it's been that kind of trajectory with these gatherings. So my husband can tell you, early on, I would come home from gatherings and I would just be so depressed. not being seen, knowing that the information I had was worthy, but the people that were gathering my information didn't treat me worthy.
Mm.
And it broke my heart. It broke my heart. It made me angry. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. And I didn't know if I had enough strength or power to do anything different.
Mm-hmm.
This is where Granny's healing comes in. So the day that I was downloaded with Sacred Waters, Spirit just kind of said to me, it's time for you to, you're not the only one, and it's time for you to gather people in marginalized communities, these women, because their stories are out here too. If you're feeling like this in these spaces and places, right, that you're going to give your history, your information. If you're feeling out in these spaces and places, what do you think other people are feeling like? What do you think other Black and brown women are feeling like? And so Spirit was just like, you know what? It's like a field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And Granny kind of stood in the gap of that, you know, that doubt, and you can do it. And Sacred Waters began to evolve. You know, my ideas, I began to write them down on paper. And then I had a moment. I got a phone call, and someone else in the area, well, not really in the area, it was in the Carolinas, where they were starting an herb conference, and they had heard that I was starting one too. Now I didn't know this person. I had never heard of them, Mason. And I'll just say that the conversation was very one-sided. It was very aggressive. It was very, what are you doing? Who do you think you are? We don't need another herb conference in the area. You can filter your people to, you know, it was that type of
Just a
conversation.
quick question about that. Was the herb conference also like a person of color conference, or was it
No,
just an herb conference?
it was a white herb conference.
Wow. Okay, continue. Yeah, I was curious about that.
And that after that conversation, she hung up because it was the founder who was calling me. She hung up. I was in tears. And about 10 minutes later, I got another call from her mentor, whom I had heard of, but had never worked with, had never, you know. And her mentor decided she was going to tear me a new ass, so to say. And it was disrespectful. She cursed and she screamed and she yelled, you know, the same thing. Who do you think you are? My student is, you know, and she hung up. And that I allowed those two women in that incident to take me from the vision of Sacred Waters for 6 years.
Oh, you were like, I had enough, the stress, the shit. I don't know what they were trying to do, but
I don't know.
intimidation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had, you know,
That's a long time.
I think I'm pretty resilient,
Yeah.
but that really pushed a thorn into my side. And Sacred Waters stayed on paper for 6 years.
Wow.
And every year I went back to the drawing board of it and just could not manifest it.
Right.
I could not manifest it. And it wasn't until that 6th year I decided to take my power back. I decided to forgive myself. And I decided to say, I'm enough, and I'm worthy, and what I have to give is so impactful. I just kind of I don't know, it shifted. Year 6, something happened for me, and it shifted, and I took all of that. I took all of that power back. Um and it manifested. And it manifested so organically and beautifully. And what I realized, Mason, is that pause, that 6-year pause, was giving me time to rebuild myself, to kind of really kind of sit in my own confidence, to sit in what I knew was downloaded into my heart and my soul. And it also showed me that you can't go, me talking to me, you can't move, you can't be like that. You can't be like that. You've received so much anger and hate, and just for simply being you.
Yeah.
So you can't give that. That's you can never work from a space of that, like in that energy. So you're gonna have to show them better than you can tell them. and oh my gosh, all my spirits were with me. They're with me. And yeah, Sacred Waters began to unfold. Along with Sacred Waters came the Afrobotany Conference, which was which is still, it's a collective gathering, a conversion of African people of the diaspora, wherever they have uh, landed, their ancestors as slaves. So if it's the Maroons of Jamaica, if it's the indigenous people of Costa Rica, the Bribri, and the Africans that, the African slaves that came to Costa Rica, if it's the African slave descendants in Cuba, wherever they have landed, there's medicine there. And I wanted to collectively pull those stories together, because see, a lot of times I think our community gets placed to the side because we don't have the books, because we don't tout the titles, because we don't go to the mainstream schools, right? So our knowledge gets thrown to the side as if it's just, like it's fairy tale stuff, like it's not real. And we have so much. We have a deep, rich history. Our healing traditions are real. And I was like, well, if I've got a story, there's what about other Afro descendants around the world? I know they have a story too. So the Afrobotany Immersion Conference came out of that, and I had a beautiful co-founder with that, Rachel Thomas. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She's an ethnobotanist. She owns Hidden Gardens Ethno-Botanical Sanctuary in Costa Rica, and I met her at the Medicines from the Edge conference years ago, maybe 8 years ago. I was there as a speaker and met her, and I was doing herb slavery in America, which was like that whole lecture was so new for the herbal community, right? When you hear herb slavery in America, you're like, mm, I'm not sure if I really want to bring this person here. Are they gonna upset the waters of mainstream herbalism? But it was a very controversial topic. It was a very controversial lecture, and really kind of unheard of in the mainstream herbalist circles. The herbalist meetings and conventions and gatherings. And she heard that at that conference, and she said, I've got a place on the Caribbean side. I want you to come and take a look. And a few years later, we sat down and was like, you know what, let's look at this. Let's look at this Afro-botany thing and see where it takes us. And so yeah, um, uh, we haven't had one since COVID. Uh, but I was just looking at the feasibility of bringing that back, and possibly bringing it to the States. next year. So yeah.
I was looking at your website, the Sacred Waters Retreat website, and I'd seen the Afro Botany retreat, and I actually had never heard of that until just recently. So I love
Mm.
that you're doing that. I would be definitely interested to learn more about that as well.
Or you know what, Mason, when we relaunch, I would love to have you there because
That'd be great.
it's open for everybody. You know,
Love it.
that's a space where, you know, everybody needs to be infused with indigenous knowledge. Again, we're co-creating community, and these plants are our ancestors as well. And they're not just here for a particular group of people. They're here for the healing of nations, as the Bible says. And so we have to be great stewards. You know, it's funny that humans take a platform, they take a platform for everything else besides other humans.
Mhm.
And I really am steeped in the knowledge, and I really stay steadfast that plants can really bridge the gap, you know, of communities, of a race of people, of races of people, of cultures. Plants should be the tool, one of the tools to bring people together, right? To understand each other, you know, in depth. And a lot of times, just like everything else, in what I've seen is that in the plant community, it's still a marginalized, you know, they still marginalize people of color within the herbalist community. I'm just like, please just give me a break. Just take a pause, take a breath, people, and just be okay. Don't be so intimidated by other people's knowledge. Don't be so intimidated. It's not for intimidation. It's to expand our awareness. It's to expand the trajectory of our humanity so we can heal. Don't you want to heal?
Probably, being a white dude, it's hard for me to see, but you would think of all communities, the herbal community would be one of the more accepting and non-racist type of communities, but
It's not.
of course it exists everywhere, and I'm sure you've experienced that firsthand. I did read this event planning book one time. You may remember this. I was the event coordinator for Mountain Rose Herbs, so I was like always reading different ways to help plan events in a better way. And one of the suggestions this book said was, you don't need to have an event that appeals to everybody. Sometimes it's good to niche down and have an event where it's just for this type of particular person. I think you're totally allowed to create an herbal wellness event for women of color, right? Like that's what you were doing with the Sacred Waters retreat, and it's unfortunate that someone was berating you or thinking that you were encroaching on their territory when you just want to feel as if you could teach to a group of like-minded people that are struggling with the same, insecurities and feeling the same type of way as you did. I've seen pictures of the Sacred Waters retreat, and it looks like you all have a fabulous time, and it looks like an amazing event, and I'm like, dang, I guess I'll never get to go.
Well, you know, the biggest thing about Sacred Waters, Mason,
Yeah.
is that I knew I needed to create a safe space.
Yeah.
Because safety was an issue that I was finding was not present in the mainstream herbalist conferences. It was very passive aggressive. The energy was always very passive aggressive. It just was not safe. It just wasn't a safe place to be. I often, and my husband would, when I'd get home, he'd be like, okay, what happened? You know, what's the story? And, generally the story was, I did my lecture, I went to my room.
Yeah, okay, at other herb conferences. Yeah.
I did my lecture, I went to my room.
Yeah.
I ate, I went, and he would say, what? Thousands of women there, and you didn't interact, and and I was like,
Well, you seem kind of shy, Sobande, so.
well, no, I'm not shy,
No, no,
but
no.
and that's hard too, because first of all, I'm a Scorpio.
Uh-huh.
So I'm very outgoing. I always have been. Like I told you at the beginning, I'm a student of the arts. You know, I'm a performing arts graduate,
Mhm.
you know, from middle school up through high school. So I have a very outgoing personality. I have introverted moments, but a very outgoing personality. I've always been able to be around crowds and, you know, be okay. You know, I'm the person that could go into the room and talk to people. That's just who I am. And so these spaces, if I was just giving my lecture and going to my room, you can just only imagine
Yeah.
the tension
Mhm.
that I had. And so I would just say, you know, sometimes people would ask, why do you continue to go to these conferences if you know you're not welcome? And you know what I would say every time? There's going to be somebody there who is from a marginalized community. They may not recognize that they're marginalized, but they're going to hear something that I have to say, and it's going to resonate with them, and it's going to open a door for them. I'm there for that one person.
Mhm.
And so I would do it every time. It's like sticking a needle in your eye. I would do it. I would do it every time. And so, yeah, I'm thankful for the experience though, because it built really deep resilience. Um, and it allowed me to take my own power into my own hands, and like, you can't shut me down. You can't take anything away from me that my ancestors haven't already given me. And
Mm.
if and look, it took one woman from the shores of Sierra Leone, which is my maternal side. One woman, one slave left the shores of Sierra Leone into the Gullah Islands, the low country. If she made it, if she made it, if she made it from a belly of a ship through rapes, no food, language barriers, never seeing her family again. One woman, and I'm here. It took one woman for me to be here. So if she could do that, then I don't have I don't have anything to complain about. All I need to do is just focus on my path, right? And do great work, stay humble, remain empathetic, you know, see the visions that continue to be downloaded in me. I don't have any reason to not stand in power. And so I take that and I ride the wave of that, Mason. I ride it every day.
Yeah, it's all about perspective and gratitude, and it sounds like you got your head on straight. So I love hearing that.
It, it took a long road.
Did you want to keep going? We're about an hour. I'm good to keep
I'm
going.
good.
Okay, cool. Let's keep rolling then, because yeah, there's other questions I wanted to ask you too. So yeah, I love hearing your optimism and how you're focusing all of your creative energy through love and yeah, just continue the work. So I actually, this is non-herbal related, but I was curious if you could kind of speak to this a little bit. You would I'd seen on your Instagram account, I want to say you were teaching some sort of marriage or couples advice, something or
Ooh.
other like that. So I was just kind of curious if you had any sort of advice for marriage and couples.
Well, this is new, but it's not new. So for years, people have been asking, when are you and your husband when are you all going to do something like for couples? Now, people always ask me, when does Sacred Waters get a men's? And I was like, listen, Linda. I came through as a divine feminine,
Yeah.
and I I don't know anything about the sacred masculine,
Yeah.
right? So I can't come from that perspective. And then the questions became, well, what about you, you and your husband work so well together. Like, we've watched you for the past 30 years, really we've a deep level of friendship, but then the support that the two of you have in your projects. And we just put it off and put off, Mason. And finally this year, we could no longer put it off. And so we were like, you know what, we're gonna do some things, for couples. We're going to begin to facilitate some sacred spaces for people who are in partnership, right? And they're looking to go deeper, to expand the knowledge of themselves and how that, that intersects with the person that they're partnered up with, because it takes a great deal of balance, right? And understanding and compassion and empathy and knowing, it's kind of like I got Kenny Rogers song in my head, knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them, right? You've got to know, right? And so yeah, we've reached this plateau where yeah, my husband he's 55, and he's the father of daughters. He will tell any man that he's learned so much about himself as a man just through the eyes of the women.
Mm.
And what a beautiful thing to realize within yourself, you know, as a man, and to hear that come out of his mouth and all the things he's learned. So yeah, this year is our inaugural year of really co-creating spaces, for people who are ready to really expand the way they're looking at their relationships. So we're doing a lot of that. Over the years, we've always done commitment ceremonies. We've always done weddings, and we've done, rites of passage things. So we've always been working, in that space together. But this year we're really, we said, okay, we're going to do something for couples this year. So that's how that came up. So
Yeah,
we'll see how that takes off.
that's exciting. Yeah, so HerbRally is co-owned by me and Amanda, who's my wife. So yeah, we're in partnership, and we're constantly, working on, a shared vision. So I think that's been helpful to have like a similar goal to work towards something. So it's cool to hear that you're doing that with your husband.
We
And
should do something. We should
that'd be
do
great.
something. HerbRally, we should get together and
Let's do it.
do something live where, you know what I mean? Where we
I'm
we sit and talk, we ask some real questions.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'd be very curious to hear what more ideas you had around that. That's a really good idea. Yeah, your husband looks like a cool guy. Like, yeah, I like seeing those pictures of you two on the Instagram. So,
Yeah, he's a Libra.
oh, me too.
Oh, see?
Yep.
He's Libra. So he really brings a lot of stability and balance to my crazy wild side. He's good at reeling me in when I go too far out into the cosmos, but he does it with such tender loving care. I always tell him, and I believe this. I believe this about Libras. Our oldest daughter is a Libra. I believe this to be true. I think that you all are the best forms of humanity. You're like the best.
I'll take it.
I really love Libra people and what they have come to the planet to do. So yeah, your wife, she's lucky. She's lucky like me.
I'm pretty lucky too. I have to ask, what's your husband's birthday?
He's October 1.
Okay, I'm October 19th. But
Okay, and
I was
my
just
daughter's
curious.
the 18th.
All right, right on. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, let's do a couple more questions.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw this, but I was gonna pull a random question from this game that we got
Yeah, let's go.
and just get to know you a little better, and then I'll answer it too, and we'll
Okay.
see. Oh, what was the best art project you've ever made?
Art project.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I could draw another card too if that doesn't resonate.
Well, I guess really goes to the question of how do we define art?
True.
Well, the best art project I've ever made are my children.
Oof, good answer. I didn't think of that one.
My children, all little 3 versions of myself. But better. Yeah, that's the greatest art project I've ever made.
Oh, yeah, there's so much love and creativity that goes into those little things. So I've got
Oh,
a daughter too,
thank you.
so yeah, I can relate.
Do you just have one child?
Yeah, just the one for now at
Okay.
least. Yeah.
How old is she?
She's 11.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
she's so. This is an interesting time for you, Daddy.
She's it's been cool to watch because this past year or so she's been getting into like going thrift shopping for clothes. I never thought I'd see her into remotely into style and stuff, but here we are,
Mm.
and she's buying these like, vintage sweaters and stuff like that. So
Oh,
it's pretty
nice.
fun. Yeah.
That's nice. She's going to teach you so much about yourself.
Oh, and she already has. And you were talking about your husband having a relationship with daughters, I've always struggled with, say, like I never had a sister, and
Okay.
so like and relationship with the mom side is always interesting, but like it's been nice to have that feminine energy in my life since she was born, and she's really taught me a lot and showed me a lot of just, that unconditional love. So
That's good. My husband
yeah.
says that too.
Yeah.
The girls, they talk to him about, when I say everything from sex
Yeah.
to I mean everything. There's no question that they are fearful of talking to their dad about.
He did a good job then. Well, you did too, but you know what I mean? So he made
Yeah.
it comfortable for them to go to him about that stuff. So that's
Yeah.
really good to hear.
Yeah.
Um, very good. Well, thanks for sharing. And why don't we do, let's see here. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover for sure, or
No, you can hit me with your best shot.
awesome. All right. Well then we'll end it on what's your favorite part of being an herbalist?
Hmm. I don't know if I have a favorite part, but I'll say that I am deeply grateful to the plants for um, their messages. Plantain and cotton are my ally plants. Um, and so I am deeply grateful that they continue to show up in ways in my life that are so deeply moving, and um, they they have a vibration that heals me in a capacity that it has been unfathomable. Um, so I am humble. I'm a humble carrier of the plant medicine. Um, I am a priestess of the plant medicine. I'm a steward of the plant medicine. And so I just have a deep level of gratitude for all that they continue to help me with in my life, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. They just continue to help me evolve as a human. And I think that's the best part of being uh, an herbalist. I really don't like to call myself a herbalist. I mean, I do what I do because it's in me,
Yeah.
and it resonates from my heart and not from my mind. And I can't imagine doing anything else, Mason. So it's been the greatest gift to me. And at this point, with 5 grandchildren, I'm now the granny. I'm now my grandmother. I am now my grandmother.
I love that.
And so I'm teaching my babies um the magic.
Mm.
I'm teaching them to be still in nature. I'm teaching them to watch the birds and talk to the chipmunks. I'm teaching them um, to hold a leaf and talk to the leaf. I'm teaching them to pick up the stick and know that the stick, you know, has a mother. I'm teaching them the magic, the things that my granny told me to do. I'm now in her shoes, and I'm doing that. So I think that would probably be my greatest, my greatest joy of being in this field.
I love it. Yeah, your grandkids are so lucky to have you, and I'm so honored that we finally got to meet and hang out. And thank you for sharing your story. And I'm just really grateful to get to spend this time with you. I'm actually already thinking, dang, Sabande, I want to do a round two with you.
Okay.
Like,
Just let me know. Let me know.
okay.
Let me know anytime, Mason. Anytime. Listen, it's not often, that we, and I say we, marginalized people, it's not often that we really have allies in our corner. And you've really hung in with me from the start. When you jumped on board with Sacred Waters, and that says a lot about who you are, not who you work for. It does. It says a lot about who you are
Yeah.
and not who you work for. And uh, I, I bow in deep gratitude. In for thanking you for, I thank you for really believing in what I'm doing for the masses, because it is making a difference. It is making a difference. If you could see the results of what Sacred Waters does for the women of color who come, the ability for them to just be able to reconnect to a source that they didn't even uh understand was already there, the magic, the plants, all of that stuff is already there. But because of whatever it is that they've been through as a marginalized society, they haven't had time. That's, herbalism sometimes is just a hobby. Uh, you know,
For
uh,
sure.
it's a hobby.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't grow up with anybody of color
Yeah.
who said, I'm a herbalist and this is what I'm doing for a living.
Right, right.
That that wasn't happening,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So every space that I showed up to in the herbalist world was always white, and it was always a hobby, or they were doing it for a living, right?
Right.
But I knew that, well, gosh, I didn't have the pleasure of that. I wasn't gifted that. But what I was gifted with was a lot of knowledge. And so, the challenge always became, what are you going to do with the knowledge, Sabande? How are you gonna make it count? So thank you so much, Mason, again, for believing enough in the vision and supporting the dream of Sacred Waters. We could not do it without allies like you. So I really bow deep gratitude to you.
I'll always be an ally. I'll always be a fan. I'll always support people of color herbalist work. Like, I'm honestly like, I I don't know if this is inappropriate to say or whatever, but I feel like I grew up without food, music, and culture.
Mm,
So
okay.
New Orleans has always kind of been my favorite city because I feel like it's infused
It is.
food, music, and culture into my soul and my spirit. And so obviously a large part of that is the African American culture there. And I have a very fond spot in my heart for that. And
That's good.
yeah, I got to meet Leah Chase. I don't know if you know who that is or
Yes.
not. Yeah, so like that was just like a great dream come true. So I love her. And yeah, so always down to support. And I don't want to give you full credit, but I'm definitely saying you probably laid the foundation for a lot of the things that are happening and people of color herbalism right now. Like Lucretia Van Dyke, she wrote a book, and again, like you're helping pave the way for
Oh,
this
thank you.
scene. And I love seeing it. And I'm actually I was just emailing back and forth with a podcast called The Petty Herbalist. I don't know if you've heard of them, but
No,
it's hosted by two black women. So
that's good.
I've listened to a few episodes and it's awesome. So anyways, I just wanted to say, always a fan, always an ally. And yeah, thanks for the kind words.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so very much. I'll continue to blaze this trail,
No.
as my ancestors have. It's so good to see. I think COVID really, I've seen there are so many Black herbalists coming out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my
Love to see
gosh.
it.
Yeah, I love to see it. I was like, where are we? Ooh, ooh, if you all, if often say, if they only knew what it took to get here,
Yeah.
right? So I'm proud of this millennial generation who, of BIPOC herbalists who are just taking charge of their own lives, and they don't care. They're just like, I'm going to be seen and I'm going to be heard. So that's a
I
good
love it.
thing.
Very good. Well, cool. Thanks again, Sabande, and we'll see y'all on the next episode of the Herbalist Hour.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.